In this video, we're going to learn about a concept called deadweight loss, which we abbreviate DWL. Now, you've already seen deadweight loss. I just wasn't very explicit about the concept in my previous videos. The deadweight loss basically happens anytime we have a policy that creates a change in welfare that is less than zero. In other words, deadweight loss is a way of explaining the loss in welfare that results from having some type of policy in place. Deadweight loss basically happens when a policy causes economic activity to go poof. Or in our examples here, the policy actually spurs on more economic activity, and it was activity that wasn't needed, so it's basically wasted economic activity. So I'm going to scroll down here a little bit and move my face out of the way, and I'm going to draw the same diagram we've been drawing all along. Hopefully it starts to get dull. Label it price and quantity. It's always best practice to give the market a name. This is typically what we see with corn production, so this could be our corn policy. We've got a demand curve. We've got a supply curve. And at the point where supply and demand cross, we have an equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. And now we're going to mess with the market a little bit by saying, you know what, we think farmers deserve more than the equilibrium price. We think they deserve some higher price. We're going to call that PL, where L stands for the loan rate. So this is going to be a non-recourse marketing loan. So we'll draw a dotted line over from the non-recourse marketing loan price, the loan rate, over to the demand curve, and then draw a dotted line down and label that QD for the quantity demanded. Same thing, out from the loan price all the way over to the supply curve, dotted line down, label that point QS for the quantity supplied. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different. Let me change colors here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to label this diagram. And you'll notice there's some shapes on the diagram. First of all, there's a square right here. We're going to call that area A. There's a triangle here. We're going to call that B. Here's a triangle pointing down towards the equilibrium. We're going to call that C. And there's this big triangle here pointing to the equilibrium. It's on the right of the equilibrium pointing to the left. That's D. There's another triangle right here. We're going to call that E. And finally, there are these two trapezoids that are up on their side. We're going to call those F and G. And what I want to do now is I want to find the change in consumer surplus. And if we go up to the diagram, and let me switch colors again, hopefully you'll remember that the change in consumer surplus is this area right here, and hopefully you'll remember that it is a negative. The consumer is worse off because of the policy that's been put in place. So the change in the consumer surplus is equal to the negative of A plus B. So A and B are the areas of the shapes. Now the change in producer surplus is very similar, but it is a positive. And the change in producer surplus is going to be everything out to the supply curve, and of course you'll remember that that is a gain in the producer surplus. So that is going to be equal to area A plus area B plus area C. And remember, the way this policy works is the government has to spend money in order to facilitate this policy. So we're going to show the government expenditure in red, and that's going to be this block right here because they're going to be paying the loan rate per bushel they buy, and in effect they're going to buy up every bit of surplus that's produced. So this area right here that I'm drawing in red is the cost of the policy to the government / the taxpayer. So the policy cost, which is always a negative because it's money going out, is going to be equal to all of these, everything in that area, which is going to be equal to the negative of B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus G. Okay. Now what you do is a very simple analysis. You look at this set of formulas here that represent these areas, and you start looking for positive areas and negative areas to see if they offset each other. What do I mean by that? Well, right here in the change in consumer surplus is a negative A, and here in the change in producer surplus is a positive A. If you add those two together, you would basically get A minus A, and A minus A is 0. And so these two areas cancel each other out. So the A's cancel each other out. And there's a negative B here and a positive B. They cancel each other out. And here there is a positive C and a negative C, and they cancel each other out. And that's all there is left to cancel out. And what's left over is the deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss is, let me scroll back up here and I'll write it down where I have some more room. So the deadweight loss in this category, in this case, is equal to area B plus area D plus area E plus area F plus area G. And you can see it quite plainly on the diagram right here. It's this oddball shape that looks like two trapezoids, looks like a pennant flag on its side, that encompasses B and E and D and F and G. And of course, C is not a part of that formula because the taxpayers paid for C, but the producers gained C. So the deadweight loss in this case is this odd-looking thing that I've drawn here in yellow. Let me go over it again here so it's easier for you to see. This whole area here is our deadweight loss. And what I want you to do is consider this. If we had a government policy that created less deadweight loss, it would create less drag on the economy. So why don't we look at the target price with deficiency payment and see how it plays out when we're looking at deadweight loss. So I'm going to flip the page and draw the diagram yet again. And what I want you to kind of keep in mind is that we're basically working off the exact same supply and demand curves. These things will have the same elasticities, so any areas we find will be exactly the same as before. There's the demand curve, there's the supply curve, there's the equilibrium price PE, there is the equilibrium quantity QE, and now instead of a loan rate, we have a target price. PT is the target price. Draw a dotted line over out to the supply curve. And then draw a dotted line down and you get the quantity supplied. And what you have to remember with the target price program, what you have to remember with the target price concept here is that the entire amount supplied also ends up getting purchased by consumers in the marketplace, where the consumers are typically other types of farmers that need to feed livestock, or maybe they're ethanol producers or something like that. So in this case, the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded are going to be the same thing. So we go from the quantity up to the demand curve and over, and we get a thing called PM. And PM is the market clearing price. This is the price the farmer will actually sell their product for out on the open marketplace. And the difference between the target price and the market price is going to be the deficiency payment. This is how much money per bushel the government's going to cut a check to the farmer for. And they're going to cut that on QS number of bushels. So let's go through and let's label some areas. And the areas don't necessarily correspond, but one of them does. And so let's make this right here area A, and this is area B. And let's make this area C, and this is area D, and this is area E, and this is area F. This little space here has no value. There's nothing going on there. And we're going to walk through our welfare analysis, and let's start off by trying to find the change in consumer surplus. So the change in consumer surplus is going to be this area here. And it is a positive number because the consumer is paying less for whatever this is. So the consumers are going to gain area C plus E plus F. Then we'll find the change in producer surplus. And that's going to be these two areas right here, this trapezoid. And it's also a gain for the producers, and it's going to be the same as the same exact size as area A, B, and C from the previous example. It's a gain, it's a positive number, so it's going to be equal to A plus B. And then the cost of the policy, the amount of money that the government / taxpayers are going to have to spend in order to create this policy and facilitate it, is going to be here. It's going to be the deficiency payment, the amount the farmers get paid per bushel, multiplied by the number of bushels that the government made the payment on. And it's this big red rectangle. And of course it's going to be a negative, and it's negative, well, of all of those, negative A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F. And then to get the deadweight loss, we do exactly what we did before. The deadweight loss is the change in welfare, and we can find it by simply offsetting things. Now, a real quick note, we always write the deadweight loss as a positive number. The change in welfare is a negative number in this particular case. Take the absolute value of the welfare to get the deadweight loss. We're just going to go cancel things out. We got a positive C here and a positive C here. They cancel. A positive E here, a negative E here. They cancel. A positive F here, a negative F here. They cancel. A positive A here, a negative A here, a positive B here, a negative B here. And we're left with area D is our deadweight loss, this area here. And what I want you to do is I want you to flip back and I want you to compare this deadweight loss to the other deadweight loss. And what you're going to notice is that this deadweight loss is area D. The other one is area D plus a bunch of other things. And so economists will look at a policy like this and say, this policy, the target price with the deficiency payment, is a better policy than the non-recourse marketing loan because it is less inefficient. And so to an economist, we like this better. To an economist, we have less overall damage done to the economy. Now, this one may be more expensive for taxpayers, and so maybe the taxpayers aren't as excited about this one. But the economist prefers it because of the lower amount of deadweight loss. All right, this video's gone on long enough. Make sure that you hang around for the next one. I've got a video next coming up where I'm going to show you how production quotas work. So stay tuned.